Ever get that feeling like you're always updating apps on your phone? You know, like every time you turn around, there's another update waiting?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, imagine that, but for a whole company.
Oh, wow.
Thousands of devices, servers, everything.
Yeah.
That's basically what patch management is, and today, we're going to take a deep dive into why it's so important.
Okay, cool.
It's kind of like the unsung hero of cybersecurity,
Yeah.
keeping all the software and hardware up to date with all the latest bug fixes, security patches, new features, all that good stuff.
Right.
And from what we've been seeing, it seems like a lot of organizations are really struggling to keep up.
Hmm.
So let's unpack this, shall we?
Hmm.
First things first, what exactly are these patches we're talking about?
Okay. So imagine your car, right?
Okay.
You wouldn't just drive it forever without ever getting an oil change or checking the tire pressure, would you?
No, definitely not.
Software's kind of the same way. It needs those regular checkups, those tune-ups, and that's where patches come in. They're basically updates to the software that can fix anything from, those little bugs that make your apps crash to serious security vulnerabilities that could let hackers in.
Oh, wow. So it's more than just fixing those little annoyances.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Patches can also include things like, new features, performance boosts to make things run faster, and like I said, those all-important security patches. And here's the thing, it's not just your computer that needs these updates.
Right,
We're
right.
talking about phones, smart TVs, even your Wi-Fi-enabled refrigerator. Anything that runs on software can be vulnerable, so it needs those patches to stay safe and up to date.
So how do these organizations, these companies stay on top of all this? Like, especially when they're dealing with, we're talking tens of thousands of devices, I think we saw in some of this research.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where patch management services come in. These are basically tools and systems designed to help companies wrangle all those updates across, their entire IT infrastructure.
Makes sense.
And there are a couple of different approaches. You got your centralized systems, which is kind of like having a control center within a company's own network.
Okay.
And then you got cloud-based systems where a third-party provider handles everything off-site.
Got it.
But regardless of the approach, a good patch management system, a good one's going to have some core functions that you really need.
Yeah. What are we talking about here?
It needs to be able to scan the network, see what devices are out there,
Okay.
take inventory of all the software running on those devices,
Mm-hmm.
check the versions to see if anything's out of date,
Right.
and probably most importantly, prioritize those updates based on risk, so you're focusing on the most critical ones first.
That makes a lot of sense, prioritizing by risk. How do they actually figure out what's the riskiest, though?
Well, software vulnerabilities are given these scores, kind of like a rating system for how dangerous they are.
Yeah.
The higher the score, the more urgent the patch becomes. It's basically like triage for software.
Oh, okay. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
So with all these systems in place, the patching process itself,
Mm-hmm.
is it all automated, or do IT folks still have to, manually update every single thing?
Well, it can be a mix of both, honestly. A lot of systems allow for automatic patching, which is great, right? You
Yeah.
set it up and it just downloads and installs updates in the background. No one
Yeah.
has to lift a finger. But there's a but, of course.
Right.
For critical systems, especially in industries where, even a few minutes of downtime can cost a fortune, there's often a manual process involved.
Okay.
So administrators get notifications about available patches and they have to, assess the risks and decide what to apply and when to apply it.
It's that human element, right? They have to make the judgment call.
Exactly.
So with all these tools and everything, you'd think staying patched would be a breeze. But it seems like a lot of organizations really struggle to keep up.
Right.
Why is that?
Well, in theory, yeah, it should be easy. But the reality is it's a lot more complicated than that. One of the biggest hurdles is downtime.
Downtime.
Some patches, especially those addressing major security flaws, they require systems to be taken offline during installation.
Right, I see.
So imagine like a hospital having to shut down its entire network to install a patch.
Yeah.
Not exactly ideal, right?
Not at all.
So it's this constant balancing act, weighing the urgency of the security update against the potential disruption to operations.
Yeah, you're weighing the risk either way.
Right.
That makes sense. What about those companies that I think we saw in some of our sources here? They only patch their systems once a month,
Uh-huh.
like during a scheduled maintenance window or something.
Yeah.
It seems like that's pretty common, but isn't that leaving them vulnerable for weeks at a time?
Yeah. Well, ideally, patching should happen more frequently, especially for those critical security updates. I mean, you wouldn't just lock your doors once a month, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
But the reality is For large organizations, with complex systems, frequent patching can be a logistical nightmare. You're talking about coordinating across different departments, scheduling downtime. It's a lot.
I can imagine.
Oh,
And then
like
you have to test all those patches before rolling them out to thousands of devices.
exactly. That's another huge piece of the puzzle. You don't want to just install a patch blindly and hope for the best, especially in a large organization. I mean, imagine a patch meant to fix a security flaw ends up causing a critical system to crash.
Yeah, you're creating more
It's
problems.
a recipe for disaster.
Yeah,
And the testing process itself can be pretty complex and time-consuming.
I bet. So it's like you're trying to herd cats, but the cats are all these different systems and devices.
It kind of is, yeah.
Yeah.
And with the explosion of the Internet of Things, we're not just talking about computers and smartphones anymore.
Right.
It's everything. Security cameras, smart thermostats, industrial sensors, medical devices, all these things are connected to the Internet now.
And they all need regular patches.
The only patches, exactly.
So for you, the listener, you might be thinking, okay, this patch management stuff, it's all very technical, but why should I care?
Good question.
What's the big deal?
Well, at the end of the day, it all boils down to this.
Hmm.
Patching is about protecting valuable data and systems. Out-of-date systems, they're basically open invitations for cybercriminals.
Right.
Think about all the sensitive information you've got stored on your devices, your bank details, your personal photos, your work documents, all that stuff.
Yeah.
The longer a company or an individual waits to patch, the more vulnerable they become to attacks that can compromise that information.
And I think one thing that stood out from, the research we were doing for this deep dive is that, it's not all doom and gloom.
Right.
There are some real positives to staying patched.
Absolutely.
Added security, obviously, better protection against breaches, and a smaller attack surface for those hackers to target.
Exactly. Think of it as a strong immune system for your digital life.
Oh, I like that. So the next time you see that little notification on your phone or your computer, that little pop-up that says, hey, there's an update available, don't just dismiss it.
Yeah.
Think about the massive effort that goes into creating those updates
Yeah.
and the potential consequences of ignoring them.
Mm-hmm.
It might seem like a small thing, but it could really make all the difference in protecting your digital world.
I agree.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
No problem.
And remember, stay patched, stay safe.
Stay safe.